Hey everyone, thanks for joining me again on my YouTube channel. This is Workshop Quick Takes. Today on Project XJ we're going to do a fairly simple modification. We are going to refinish and replace a factory stock rear bumper on our 2000 Jeep Cherokee XJ. And we're going to do it in a way that you could also do at home. Why? Well, we have lots of photos from the history of this vehicle that show it with a fairly sizable vertical dent in the rear bumper. At a distance it didn't look like much, but if you got up close and looked at it, you could see it folded in enough to V-notch the bottom side of the bumper. And then, the first time we took it off to do our trailer hitch actually, what we discovered is that both of the rear brackets also had tears in them. It turns out both the bumper and the brackets are designed to fail as part of the crash protection. So, we found a guy on Craigslist that happened to be selling two because he was closing down a parts breaker business for 15 bucks each, and so we took both. One of them's in perfect condition. It's going to go on another new project that we've got coming up soon, but the other one with just a very small dent and perfectly fine brackets is going on to the four-door. Yeah, you might be looking at an off-road bumper in your kit or something like that, but if you want to just keep it looking nice the way it is, here's how. Our first step was to remove the plastic trim that closes the gap between the body and the bumper surface. It's attached from the factory with single-use POM plastic rivets. These have to be snapped off or clipped off, whichever works better. Replacements are available from Harbor Freight, most auto parts stores, and the usual online vendors when the time comes. Or you can use other suitable trim clips. Our next step was a trip through the car wash. We were hoping to take off all or most of the sun-baked stickers in the process, but removed a bit less than hoped. That meant they would have to be sanded or wire brushed. Pretty much all bolts for the bumper are well known for freezing up tight. The first step is penetrating oil, and depending on how many times a bumper has been removed, you may or may not find all the factory hardware back here. In OE form, the lower bracket bolts use clip nuts somewhere in the metric M6 range, while a pair of press-fit bolts occupy the upper bracket slots. If those have previously failed, then you may find generic nut and bolt hardware anywhere from SAE 5/16 inch to 1/2 or even metric M4, depending on what the previous owner found in their salvaged hardware bin. Extra heat may come in handy if the penetrating oil and bigger bars are not sufficient to remove everything. But one way or another, it's ideal to completely remove the brackets before trying to do a full restoration on the bumper. We didn't have a serious rust problem on this bumper. If that happens to be your problem, twisted rope wire brushes and rust-converting acids are probably in your future at this step. Harsh solvents like lacquer thinner and acetone might also be useful for sticker removal, along with rubberized eraser wheels and similar treatments. But since the surface of this bumper was badly oxidized and required demolition of the paint to ensure that new paint would actually stick, we found solace in traditional cup wheel wire brushes.
That, kids, is why Daddy doesn't let you put bumper stickers on his car.
In any case, if you have rust pitting or otherwise use heavy wire brushing or coarse grit sanding to repair the paint, bear in mind the metal surface may be damaged and require filler primer or other means of smoothing to remove the damage prior to repainting. Otherwise, those cut lines may reappear through the final finish. Finally, the workpiece needs to be thoroughly cleaned. Dawn dish soap and a strong degreasing agent are useful supplies at this step. We were using simple green, but a wax and grease remover from the paint aisle at your local shop is also a viable option for final prep. Heavy oil-based paints may successfully cover a mildly dirty surface, but many types of aerosol sprays will not. Alright, last stop is going to be these bumper brackets. Then we can get on with painting, but first I need to clean these like usual. And once I'm done cleaning them, I'm going to take them over to the bench because one of them in particular is a little bit bent in around the press fit bolt. So I'll hammer that out a couple times until I like it, and then we'll get on with it. Not quite there, but getting closer. We started our bumper paintwork with Rust-Oleum's Rust Converting Primer. For material that has been fully stripped to bare clean steel, an acid etch primer would be more suitable. For a piece like this that has minor surface rust and a thin remaining layer of the factory finish, this works quite well in our experience. We then turned our attention to painting the brackets. These had minor surface damage, but were also not deeply rusted or pitted, so they also got the rust converting primer. And when that was dry, a coat of satin black was added over it. Okay, my next step here is to scuff this bumper up with Scotch-Brite. In case you don't know, paint adhesion has two steps. One of them is chemical, but the other is mechanical. Creating lots of surface area for the next layer of paint to go onto helps the paint stick a lot better than if you try to apply it to a smooth or even glossy surface. It'll peel right off of that. The bumper then got a bit of correction around the main bolt holes using a crescent wrench. That's an old panel beater's trick for making corrections of this type, and it works pretty well provided you tweak the workpiece in small twists and don't stay in one spot for too long. Finally, we went at it with Rust-Oleum's trim and bumper paint. It provides a durable satin black finish with enough heavy solids to do a little scratch fill if you are inclined to lightly sand one or two intermediate coats. For a mild trail rig like this one, we didn't bother with that, but it still provided a durable, weather-resistant finish that seems to be holding up well a year later. I'm finally getting to tackle a project I've been wanting to get on for a while, and that is rear bumper. Now keep in mind what you're seeing here is actually after I did a bit of straightening on, but in practice it's a little bit pooched out right down there because it got folded in up here. Bending it out didn't quite fix it with the tools I had available at the time. Now removing this bumper involves a couple more pieces than you might think. There is of course the main steel piece itself, but then there's also the two brackets under here that attach to the frame horns, and they actually mount this way. So one of the bolts comes through on the back side here and tries to hide behind the corner cap, and one comes out the bottom. But these are very, very difficult to remove in place on the bumper. You might be able to do it with patience and determination if they're not too rusted or Loctited in like these were. These four here, you can get to under there and then remove the bumper with them. You're also going to need to remove the bumper corner caps. On this vehicle, that's actually going to be a little easier than it would on stock because these have already been cut back for the wide body fender flares. So there's just one bolt under here, and they're attached to a couple of the OE hook retention system clips here. And then we're going to have some wiring to deal with. This is where our trailer hitch assembly comes out of the vehicle. Thankfully, it just goes down behind that plastic thing right there. And we're going to find a similar thing underneath this light over here where the rear trail lights come out. And there's a harness under there that feeds those. And since we do have the trail lighting tied up here, bracket there I think, bracket there, and probably a couple zip ties. Okay, I mean I can give you the bolt sizes here. This is a 7, this one's 10. But since these are custom work that I've done, yours is going to be completely different if you still have them installed. Okay. That there now gives us a little better view of what's going on with the retainer bracket. Then also we have our trailer wiring looped around over there. bonus bolt. I think that's from one of the tail lights. Some of the custom wiring I did for the rear lights, including a Deutsch connector there. Hopefully that unsnaps nicely, because that was the original intent. Now this bumper is a heavy bit of business, even if we didn't have to remove wiring. So we're gonna make our life a bit easier if we have something to just rest it on. A pair of 5-gallon buckets should do the trick. Now it's almost gonna be impossible to see these up in here while we're working on them, but for what it's worth, they are 15s. Thankfully I've had these out before. Otherwise, some penetrating oil would be highly recommended for this job. Huh, 1 of 8. All right, we've skipped ahead in time a bit, and I've now pulled 6 bolts, 3 from each side, leaving just the top outside one on each bracket. And that's the good one to save for last, because you can actually get to that from the bottom somewhat, but also from the side. So when you're working with the awkwardness of trying to pull that bolt and having the bumper drop down, that's the one you want to be messing with. For no reason in particular, I'll start with the last one over here. Kind of still wants to hang there, but it's about to drop because catching on the trailer hitch. That's nice. We'll leave it there for now. There we are. Okay. Looks like I've got a bunch more zip ties to undo here. I put these Deutsch connectors here so that I would be able to get the driving lights off in the future. So let's see if they're actually going to come apart today. There we go. Ooh. Yike. Pull the weather seal right out. Wonder if any of this would actually tuck up to these holes on the frame. Same problem. Pulled the weather seal right apart. But at least it's working. Inside the connector is very clean, in spite of how dirty the outside is. Well, let's get this bumper over to the sawhorse, figure out where we need to put in the holes to remount our trail lights, and then get it remounted. Well, there it is. This part right here turns out to be the single biggest reason why we're having issues, because once the bumper folded in that far, short of having an actual press to push it back to OE shape, it was never going to be the same again. This is also illustrative of how these things are designed to fail. You can see that one there is torn there and there where it started to push under. This one here didn't go as far, but it is cracked there and cracked there. If you hit fairly square on the bracket, it's designed to fold under first. On the one that we had, it had obviously been hit a little higher, and we saw how one of those little bolt heads there had pooched in, and we had to straighten that back out. Just kind of neat that you can see how these brackets are actually designed to fail in an accident and crush in before the force of the accident continues on into the uniframe if it's hard enough. Let's go ahead and get it set up for success back here. This really is your best opportunity to see what the condition of things is under here. And also, if you take a flashlight, especially a slim bar one like this, it is your only opportunity to see what's really going on in here. Now, I'm not seeing too much going on in here. When I put on the trailer hitch, I had to install these replacement nut strips in order to reinforce the mounting position for them. However, I did see a little surface rust in this side only at that time. And I sprayed some black paint in there while I had the whole spot empty, and I don't see anything new going on. However, you can use something like fluid film or any other type of rust limiting body cavity wax, or in this case, this is lanolin based. Wool wax is another, I believe. Use your preference. But if you spray that into cracks and crevices where moisture can accumulate and not dry out very quickly, it can help prevent corrosion, especially if you live in a salt belt. final step, I want to get an anti-seize compound into these. And I'm going to try and leave some extra on there so that hopefully in the future it migrates in as well. Then wash, rinse, and repeat over here. Next step, let's go and get a bracket in place. Similar situation over here. Okay, good enough for now. Next step then is to test fit our electrical. I could actually bring this back through here. Now I guess if I put a tie right there to make sure that it remained out like this, it'd probably be fine. Okay, since these are hidden from the sun, they don't need the protection of a black zip tie, and these red ones will be a lot easier to see in the future if I'm looking around to figure out what happened. Okay, so that's going to come out from under the bumper and down here somehow. And we'll figure out exactly how later. All right, hopefully we're set up for success now. Just need to go finish moving lights from one bumper to the other. For today, I think I'm going to reuse the plastic trim off this one since I've already got a little hole cut there, and why not? That means I've still got a clip here that I need to break off, one here, and this one's already gone. Go figure. So we'll set that aside for a minute while we do the drilling and tapping. Need to remove the lights by pulling the little bolts down there. At this point, if you have any bumper mounted accessories such as a tire carrier, a ham radio antenna, or just a basic pair of trail lights, you will need to figure out how to remount them on the replacement unit. We are using a small pair of LEDs from Harbor Freight, but that does mean 3 holes per light, 1 for the power cord feed through and 2 for the mounting bolts. Since we already did the measurements when these were installed on the old bumper, we just needed to transfer the same hole sizes and centers across, and then break out the hand tools. A drill and a stepper bit were put to good use here. We did the job dry, but if you need cutting lubricant, WD-40 would be a pretty good choice. Of course, it might be a good idea to do this work before doing the repaint, but since all of these holes are hidden behind each of our lights' rubber mounting grommets, we didn't care which way we did it. We did touch up the holes with paint to ensure the exposed metal would not become fresh rust starts. And if you do need to protect better paint than what we had here, consider using painter's masking tape both on and around the immediate work area to protect the surface from tool marks and metal swarf scratches. Just don't forget to peel the tape from the clean outside edge back toward your new holes. If you peel from the work area outward, the tape can sometimes lift clear coat or paint away from the freshly cut edge, and that usually results in a bad time. Just slightly off from each other, but good enough. Last step over here is our trim piece. Okay. Although it is messy, the tiniest bit of anti-seize grease would actually do the trick here. Looks like everything's okay in there. And maybe it's a little too airtight, because I'm not hearing the click. There it is. We're good. Okay, that one definitely went together. A little more on these, just so it's back in the threads good. Go up and line up. And that is where it's supposed to mount. See the bolt studs coming through, so we're there. It's not as clean as it gets. I'm gonna reach back up in here, spin that on since it's nice and freshly cleaned. Now, before going any further down with the bolting on, let's just make sure that our lights still work like we hope they do. 2 for 2. Looking good. Oh no. But still slightly off kilter. Oh, I see. So this is pushed in just slightly up back here. Well, what to do about that? Do I notch this or do I notch that hole? Smart money says the hole. Live and let die, I guess. Okay. It's been a little bit slow, but not as slow as trying to put the bumper brackets on 4 bolts at a time. Now to me, that's feeling pretty good. But if you have any doubt about the torque spec on these, you can always go get a breaker bar and repeat what we just did. But that's not coming off. One last little tug on this. Yeah. Now do it again. Okay. Our light cable's routed correctly, not pinched. We're ready for the side caps and done. These could use a coat of paint, but I've officially run out of time, so they're just going back on in their standard spots. Doesn't sit as nice as it ought to on the ridges here. Okay. Sounding pretty solid. It's good as it's going to get for today, and it's a lot better than it was. So that was a lot of work, but we got it done. Hopefully it gave you some ideas on how you can change some basic body pieces like that. Front and rear bumpers, very similar in how they attach. Couple screws here, couple brackets there. And likewise, then once you have the bumper off, it's a good idea to look around and see if there's anything else you need to do under there. You thinking about doing your trailer hitch? That's where you get to it, on the rear. Also, you do need those nut strips where we showed that we had replaced those. Got an opening like we had there into the frame rail, spray some body cavity wax into it. But one way or another, get out there, work on yours, make it better, make it do what you want and need. So, thanks for joining us again today. We'll see you again next time, whenever that is.
Has anyone seen my phone?